So this was the actual day, September 9th?
I think it was. It was right around here. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
We're on.
Yes, indeed, we are. Good morning, everyone. I'm Kevin Allen, and I'm joined by my podcast partner, Tom Laidlaw. And 40 years ago today, we know exactly where Tom was. He was at the New York Rangers training camp preparing to be an NHL player. First of all, does it feel like it was 40 years ago?
No, it really doesn't at all. An old college teammate of mine, won't mention his name, Greg Tignanelli. He's from the Detroit area. He sent me a message right before we did the show. I mentioned it was 40 years. Man, it doesn't at all. Like it's pretty vivid memories. We stayed in a hotel in White Plains, New York. We were at Rye Playland for training camp in Rye, New York. And I tell a story all the time about, I thought I knew the NHL a little bit because I'd come up at the end of the previous year to play in the playoffs in New Haven. But in those days, the old guys would come into training camp. Like they wouldn't work out all summer long. They'd rest during the summer. So the young guys, I was in great shape, probably best training camp in my career as far as conditioning. And I was just flying around. I thought, geez, the NHL is pretty easy. But, as time goes on, the NHL guys now get in shape and everything. And it's funny, like early in training camp, probably 3 or 4 days into it, we were scrimmaging. And Phil Esposito, that was going to be his last year. And he had this fantastic career. And he comes through the neutral zone with the puck. And I was supposed to hit people when I was playing. That was my job. So I dropped him. I hit Phil, knocked him right on his rear end. And he was hot. It was like, I thought to myself, what did I do? It's like 3 or 4 days into training camp. So guys aren't really hitting that much yet, but I'm trying to make the team. And he was steaming at me. He got up and had some choice words. And but he was very good. In the locker room after, he came over to me and he says, oh, I was so mad at you. He says, you really want to make this team, don't you? I said, yeah, Phil, I've always wanted it all my life. And he said, okay, I respect you for that. Good job. But I was really thinking, oh, God, they're going to send me home. I just dropped Phil Esposito, so.
Wow. Yeah, I don't think players would do that today. I mean, if you were in a Boston training camp, would you go after Patrice Bergeron?
Yeah. But back in those days, yeah, you're right. It's like, I'm trying to make the team. And I really didn't think through the whole thing. I knew my instinct was that's my job. He's got
Yeah. Well, it is interesting now. Now, don't you think now it's the other way around? Like the veterans know how to train and prepare for training camp. And, it's the rookies that are, probably not as prepared for it, probably mentally more than physically.
Yeah, totally.
For a training camp because, when I first started covering the NHL, it was still like that. Even in the 80s, guys would show up and, one of the stories in training camp was who showed up out of shape because it would happen all the time.
Yeah.
Guys would spend the summer on the boats and, fishing and golfing and, partying and carrying on and drinking beer. And then they'd show up and, the story 3 days in any camp would be, well, so-and-so is still 14 pounds overweight or, that was just a tale. And now, and the other story would be who won all the fitness testing.
Right.
That would be a big story because, it was unique then. It was different then. There were guys that were known around the league, for being in great shape. Like, Rod Brindamore would win all those.
Yeah.
Because he was always in great shape.
I remember Herbie came in my second year. That was an eye opener for everybody.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I'll bet.
With her and we got over to Finland for training camp and we did all our physical testing in New York before we left. And I didn't I had a good rookie year and I got like that. I thought, okay, I'm a veteran now. This is how the veterans do it. So I went up to Marquette, Michigan, where I went to school. Hung out with my buddies, sat around, drank beer, and ate potato chips all summer long. And the worst thing I could have done, that combination with Herbie Brooks, and it's like I gave him an opportunity too. Like he gave him an opportunity to make an example out of me. So we flew all the way over to Finland, got on the ice right away, skated for 45 minutes, and then he kept me out on the ice all by myself for another half hour and skated my rear end off. And the guys were dying laughing. I'm like, I'm thinking I'm this veteran now. I played 1 year in the league. And he brought me into we had these little cabins we were staying in. And we had this training camp there at Viramäki, Finland, I think it was. And he just ripped into me. Oh, it was, and I was like, and I thought, what have I done here? So I got myself in shape during training camp and didn't do that again. So
how many pounds were you overweight, would you guess?
I'm probably like 15 or 20 and bad weight too. It was just like wasn't like I put on muscle weight. It was fat. Like, and Herbie would do the fat test. We'd do the VO2 test. So he knew exactly how bad it was, and
when was the last time you had a potato chip now?
Oh, it's a long time now.
Yeah.
I was actually thinking of you last night because you said something before. I was sitting down eating cucumbers and guacamole last night. So that was my snack.
Yeah. Well, even my wife has changed. My wife plays soccer and twice a week. And, when she comes home, that she has the late games. And in the old days, she would have, she ices and stretches after the game. I mean, that's how you play into your 60s. Right. You have to be able to, ice your body down and all that. So she gets her pajamas on and gets the ice out, and she'd always get a snack. And her snack before used to be peanut butter, energy and pretzels.
Right.
And now it's hummus and carrots or cucumbers.
Yeah, there she goes. Oh, God.
That's changed over time. Right. Still ices, still stretches, but
that's good.
She has changed her.
We should get her on a podcast. She's a legend. Like, she can fix everything around the house. She
can. It's funny. I just talked to another woman who sounds like she's a lot like my wife. Someone had created, and really it looked like a stack of wood, and he put it on Facebook, and he said, I just sanded and cut all this wood, and it was just a stack of wood. What do you think this is? And people were guessing, and this woman who I know, she's part of a kind of a charitable organization that I've done some work with. She right away said, "Oh, it's a chair." And he goes, "You're right. How did you know that?" And she didn't say on Facebook, but I talked to her yesterday because we were coordinating something that I was going to help with. And I said, "How'd you know about that chair on Facebook?" She goes, "Well, because I do that stuff." Yeah. And she says, "I knew it was an Adirondack chair because she's fooled around with making those and does all that." She goes, "Yeah." She goes, I do all that stuff around the house." She goes, "I'm the person who puts the garbage disposal in." I go, "Yeah, that's my wife. My wife does exactly all that stuff." She likes all that. Well, we've gotten off hockey here, and there's a lot I want to talk about. And I guess the first thing I want to do, and I prepped you beforehand to let you know we want to do this, is, I've been struck by how much enjoyment I've gotten out of these playoffs. Like, I've enjoyed the competition, and it's not like it's totally different than what we're used to. Usually, there's a team that surprises you a little bit, and so forth. But I think out of these, this is maybe because we needed it so much. We had gone a couple months where there was no sports and there wasn't much. We had run out of binging on Netflix, and there wasn't able to do. So I've really gotten into it. And so I wanted to kind of go over and talk about maybe your 5 things that you've learned from these playoffs, and I'll give you my 5. Maybe we'll do it like we've done it in the past, where you give me one and I'll give you one of mine, and
sure,
we'll move like that. So let's do that. Go ahead. The one thing that you learned.
The first one, I think it's the goaltending. The way they've gone back and forth each team, except other than Tampa Bay. I'm that. I guess I'm still a little bit an old school guy. That you got your guy. If you have a guy, then he's your guy. Like, to me, Varlamov with the Islanders was the guy. And if he got hurt, I can't remember if he got hurt or whatever, and Grace had to come in or had a bad game. And I think, and Rod Brindamore did it actually in the first round. I guess he was the first guy that did it, where he switched goaltenders, even though his initial goaltender, Mrazek, was really doing well. So that's the first big surprise for me. Yeah,
and I agree with that. I still find it a little odd. Like, and I get that there's kind of a intangible issue with the Vegas Golden Knights because they have a number 1 goalie who now isn't number 1 anymore, and he's a future Hall of Famer. He's the face of the franchise. I'm talking about Marc-Andre Fleury, and Marc-Andre Fleury hasn't done anything to deserve the loss of his number 1 status, except that Robin Lehner has been very, very, very good. He stole the net from Marc-Andre Fleury, and that's exactly what he did. He stole it.
Very true.
He got a chance to play, and he was great, and he just has given it up. And so, it's to me, it's a little odd, even though Vegas Golden Knights had a bunch of games together. Now, in the regular season, that's totally acceptable. That's just the way we think now. Oh, you can't play back-to-back. Oh, my gosh. They're going to be so tired. They won't be able to play the next day. And so he put Marc-Andre Fleury back in, even though, as I recall, Leonard was coming off a tremendous performance.
Yep.
Fleury comes in. He wasn't bad.
Yep.
He gave up 1 goal and they lost.
Yep.
There was nothing wrong with his performance. But we went back to Leonard because Leonard has been the guy in the postseason. And he pitches shutout 3-0 last night.
Yep.
And, we've seen that. It's almost like they've brought regular season strategy into the playoffs, and we're not used to that. And I for one, don't like it.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I was going to say. Don't like it at all, especially when there's no travel. Like, I mean,
that's right. And it's just self-fulfilling. Like I heard DeBoer talking about, we had back-to-back, and
I know.
And I'm going, oh, come on, let's get back to the old days. Call Tom Laidlaw, and he'll tell you that they used to look forward to back-to-back games.
And then we talked about it last week or whatever. You looked at Columbus and Tampa Bay played over 2 games in one night. That whole back-to-back thing. And we talked about it. I think it's become this self-fulfilling prophecy. I know people are going to look at the numbers and say, "Well, Tom, the numbers bear out." I mean, teams play as well in the second. Yeah, because you keep talking about it all the time. It's just I agree, but. At the same time, like I said, like when Brind'Amour did it, and I was like, what? It's the first round of the playoffs, and you're doing it. But at the same time, his team won. So obviously he knew his team and he knew his goaltenders, and he felt confident in both goaltenders. I think that's the key, right? As long as the coach says, listen, I feel confident in both guys, then you go ahead and do it.
Well, and I'm not, I said they shouldn't have switched to Thatcher Demko. And what do I know? Thatcher Demko put him right into a game 7. And who would have thought that? I remember, and I brought it up the last time that I had heard around the league. Well, they really want to get Markstrom signed. He's part of the group and all that. And Thatcher Demko, it's taken him a little bit longer. Not that they don't believe in him anymore, but it's not like they think he's the greatest goalie in the history of mankind. And then Thatcher Demko came in, and then he did look like the greatest goalie of all time.
And that kind of leads me toward the second thing for me is and I don't think it's really a surprise, but I think it really showed you more how much these young players are mentally and physically ready to play and play big roles. Like you look at Vancouver, for instance, I thought, it looked like, they tried, Vegas was going to try to run them out of the rink, especially with Pettersson and Hughes and everything, but they fought back. I mean, they didn't, it's the smaller guys, skilled guys, not known to be physical players, and the young players, and they stood up to them. I mean, ultimately lost the series, but it wasn't because they got run out of the rink.
Well, no, if I can amplify that, it's not on my list, but I love that point, is it feels like the game's changed a little bit. It isn't – experience still matters, I think, but probably has given way a little bit to the energy created by youthful enthusiasm and speed.
Yeah.
All these young guys can fly.
And maturity too. Like they've got the ability to fight through. I thought, and I don't mean to be critical, I thought Quinn Hughes was going to cry in the first game. Look at his face, like he was almost crying. But I thought, oh God, he's going to lose it. He's not going to be able to come back from that. That next game, he was fantastic again. So
yeah. Well, by the time these young players get to the NHL, they've played on the big stage at the World Juniors. They faced, it used to be. And you've talked about your experiences in getting drafted. It was just a shrug. But today it's a much bigger deal. Everybody's got agents when they're 12 and 14, and that's an exaggeration, but a lot of them have.
Oh, it's true. Yeah. No, it's not much of an exaggeration. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. And all that. So I think it's kind of changed all that. But let me give you a couple of mine. We'll talk about those, and then we'll move back. Number one is the Vancouver Canucks, and you've sort of alluded to this, are going to be a Stanley Cup contender for the next 4 or 5 years.
Yes.
They were really ready this year. They were far more advanced than I thought they were going to be, a lot for the reasons you said. I mean, Bo Horvat and Pettersson and Quinn Hughes and Besser, and even veterans like Edler. I mean, they have a collection of players that know how to play this game, and they have some highly skilled players. I mean, Pettersson is, in terms of pure skill, in the top 8 players in the league, maybe in terms.
Oh, absolutely. No
problem. So I just like this team. I think they're ready now. Thatcher Demko. The big question is, what do you do now? You're Brian Benning, Tom. What do you do with the Markstrom situation when you know you got Thatcher Demko in your back pocket here? What do you try to get him to sign for?
Well, yeah, I mean, or do you sign him at all? I mean, I know it's a little bit of a gamble when you got a young goaltender, but you got a flat cap. Markstrom's going to want to get paid. I mean, what is he worth? Is he worth a $7 or $8 million a year goaltender? And with the flat cap, and you've got to get other guys signed coming up. I mean, if I'm Markstrom, I guess part of the issue too is what is the market for goaltenders out there? It's nice to say, okay, Markstrom, you think you're that good and you want an 8-year contract because you think you're one of the top goaltenders in the league, but where are you going to get it someplace else?
Well, the goalie market is never as good as you want it to be.
Yes.
And sometimes goalies get lucky. Like Bobrovsky last year had a team that really, really wanted him.
Yep.
And he got a big, big contract. Florida thought he's the answer to all of our prayers. Yep. And as it turned out, he wasn't. But they thought he was. And it just takes one willing to give you the money. But I think for the most part, goalies, they go into free agency, the summer gets here, and they look around and they're thinking 31 NHL teams, and then they discover, well, there's only 3 looking for goalies.
Yep.
And 2 of them don't want an older goalie, they want a younger goalie, and then you're kind of stuck.
Yep.
So,
because a team like Washington, it's awful. The goaltender's name there in Washington, it's terrible. I can't remember. Who is it?
I don't know who we're talking about.
The older goaltender that's contract's up in Washington.
Oh, Holtby. Yeah,
I can remember that. Brain damage. So, I mean, he's out there, right? I mean, he's a free agent at the end of the year. Right. What happens with Henrik Lundqvist? But even those teams, okay, you could say, well, Washington's just not going to bring in a Markstrom. They want their young guy to play there, right? So, yeah. But the problem is going to be for me, if you're thinking that Thatcher Demko is your goaltender coming up, if you then keep Markstrom, you got to pay him a decent amount of money. Well, now he's going to be taking away ice time from Thatcher Demko, if you really believe that Thatcher Demko can be your goaltender. So it's not just the money part, but okay, if you want to develop these young goaltenders, they've got to play.
Well, you almost got to trade Thatcher Demko if you sign Markstrom to a long period of time, because when's this going to be his time? Like if you gave, let's just say, well, first of all, do you got to give him $8 million? Because who is going to give him?
Good point. Okay, and that's an excellent point. So you may say to him, listen, okay, go check, go see what the market is. I mean, they did that with Stamkos years ago in Tampa. He ended up coming back and signing. So go see what the market is. And if he doesn't come back to you, then you can say, listen, we'll give you a 2-year deal at $5 million a year. Is that too much? I mean,
yeah. No, to be honest with you, I've always thought, even, it's a crazy notion.
Right.
But even though goalies are the most important players on the team, there's usually more than the 31 that we need, the number one goalie. So you don't, there are very few goalies that I would, give them the moon and the stars. I would certainly do that for Vasilevsky. Yep. I think there are other players out there that I would consider it with, but Markstrom, I like him, and I thought he was crucial to what they did this season. But I don't know if you lock him up even to say 5 years. Let's say he says, "I'll take 5 years at 5.5 or 6," and but
then you trade Thatcher Demko. Then
you got to trade Thatcher Demko because when does he come in? When he's 30?
Right. And you got to remember, Robert Leonard's going to be out there. Pittsburgh's training one of their goaltenders. So yeah, I mean, you think about it more and more, Markstrom. So that's why I think you're not going to have to give him 5 years. But here's the issue now. So here's a guy that thinks he's a top 10 goaltender in the National Hockey League, and you're going to say, listen, I can only give you a 2-year deal at $5 million a year.
Yeah,
the guy's not that it's a big deal. You're not going to have a real happy camper. Plus, now if you're saying that Thatcher Demko is my guy, I need to play him. Now Markstrom's sitting on the bench most of the time too. So what's he worth at the end of the 2 years? So it's like if I'm Markstrom, I don't want to re-sign in Vancouver if that's the case. If that's the way they look at him.
Yeah. I mean, he'd be better off, I think, maybe in Calgary.
Well, you know what? Now there's 2 teams, Calgary and Edmonton, right? I think a lot of people think could upgrade their goaltending.
Yeah.
Right. So, okay. But then, Holtby's there, Leonard's there. Are both those guys better than Markstrom? I mean, Leonard right now is. I don't know if Holtby is looking like that, but and then,
Yeah. Holtby didn't do himself any favor. Yeah. He didn't look very good in this postseason. So, Anyway, well, let me give you my second point here. And this is going to be interesting because I think everybody acknowledges that he's an exceptional player, but I still think this is true. Braden Point's the most underrated player in the league.
You know what? It's interesting you say that because everybody's like, wow, he's good. But I thought everybody already knew he was that good.
Well,
right?
They did, but I don't think they knew it was this good. And I'll bring up one point. The first question after Braden Point had his 5-point game, and it might have been Chris Johnson from Sportsnet. I can't remember exactly who it was. And it went to Victor Hedman. And the question was, is there anything Braden Point can't do? That was the question. And Victor Hedman just kind of laughed it off. He goes, well, no, not really. We see this all the time. Well, he's just been exceptional. Like, these are Gretzky-like numbers, 23 points in 14 games. And, what was he, a third-round pick? I don't remember exactly.
I thought it was a little later than that even. But
maybe. But anyway, he's almost come out of nowhere. I mean, that's an exaggeration. But people knew who he was, and now we know he's a good player. But I don't think that people thought that he was, Steven Stamkos.
Right.
He's better than what Stamkos might have done.
Isn't that true? You wonder how much ice time he would have gotten if Stamkos is there, right? You've got to play Stamkos. Does Point lose some of that ice time he got? And is that part of the reason now we're seeing more of his skill level?
Yeah. Well, and we've seen stories now that suggest that even if Stamkos comes back in the final, they're not going to break up that point line because it's going too good.
Yeah. Why would you? Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and Stamkos just kind of moves. So, and again, I think it's an odd statement by me to say he's underrated because I do think people knew he was a very good player. But I think he's even better than people think he is. Like, he is just a guy that makes things happen. And every time, I'm kind of an unusual sports fan because I've been a sports writer all my life. I don't necessarily root for teams. I like the competition, and generally I get a rooting interest as I'm watching a game. Like, I came in just to watch a game, and it doesn't matter to me who wins. And then based on what happens, I start rooting everything. Well, I tend to watch certain players, and every time Braden Point's on the ice, I'm watching him because he's going to make something happen. So Anyway, give me number 3 for you.
Well, I guess it happens quite a bit, but what I really was surprised at, Boston was the President's Trophy winner this year. Philadelphia had a fantastic year. And when they both got beat out, I hear a lot of talk now. Do these teams done? They'd have to retool now. Is Boston going to have to, make all these moves, or they and I think to myself, this team they just won the President's Trophy. So I think it's that. To me, it was kind of a surprise that I hear it more and more that particularly with Boston, that they're going to have to retool. Where I still think they're one of the top teams in the league. If Chara doesn't come back, obviously they got to address the Krug issue, especially if Chara doesn't come back. But I still think they're one of the top teams in the league. And it seems like I'm hearing a lot of talk that they're going to have to retool that team, which I don't agree with.
Well, this is going to be fun because one of mine are the Boston Bruins teetering on the end.
See, now people need to know we did not compare notes on that one.
No, we did not. Yeah. Now, here's my problem. As I watched this team, and I thought the Bruins, I'm right with you. They were number 1 in the regular season. They were the most consistent team. Yep. I love their top line. Chara is still playing reasonably well, but here's the problem. Chara is 43 years old. Mm-hmm. Bergeron is 35. Krejci, who was one of their better players, 34. Marchand is even 32. DeBrusk, who is their secondary scoring, one of their lead guys, got a contract issue, and people are saying they may not have the money to pay him. Rask was talking about retirement before this was happening. We heard that at the end of the regular season. So my concern is this: there's really no reason for them to think that they're in trouble, but there are signs that they're going to have to try to make some changes. The depth has eroded. I don't think there's any doubt that that's the true. Now they've got some guys coming up that I think everybody kind of will like, but some of them are a little unproven, and so we're going to have to wait and see. So I think it's justified to wonder a little bit about where we're headed with the Bruins.
You make some valid points. I guess part of why I have confidence in the Bruins is that they're one of those teams, not unlike Detroit was for many years, that they built a culture there. So that's already in place. It's not like you're going to have to, like I look at Edmonton, and I think they're starting to get their culture back now. But they didn't have a culture for a long time. They had all those first overall picks in the draft, but really didn't build a team. They had all these talented guys, but really having a team culture. So I think with Boston, they have that. You're right. Chara is old, and if he does play one more year, you would think that, okay, that's probably it for him, have one more year. Bergeron, I mean, I keep thinking to myself, man, this guy's been beat up, right? You keep thinking of some of the injuries he's played with, particularly in the playoffs, but he had another fantastic year this year. I'm not a big fan of Halak, so if Rask does decide to retire, then I think there's an issue there, goaltender. But we were just talking about all the available goaltenders out there. If Rask does retire, you've got it. To me, there's a lot of available goaltenders that can do what's similar to what Rask has done. So I think, are they going to have to make some changes to the team? Yes, but I don't think it's that, okay, the team is done and now it's going to have to do what the Rangers did a few years ago and kind of regroup now. So to me, I still have confidence that culture they have there in Boston will keep them near the top.
Well, one point I forgot to bring up, but both you and I know this is too. Torrey Krug is gone. Like he's leaving through free agency. That's pretty clear. I
think so. If Chara leaves, you don't think they'll make more of a push to keep him?
I don't know. I don't think Chara's leaving, number one, but I don't know. I mean, it seems to me like Krug's already made his bed and he's gonna, go out there.
What to say that has he made comments like that?
Well, I mean, he's talking as if he's gone,
right?
So, they've tried to get him signed. So who knows? Anything could happen.
Yeah, to me that could be just talk, though, right? I mean, like I remember, like when Stamkos was a free agent, Tavares was a free agent. They didn't talk at all. Like you had no indication publicly of where they were going to go. And ultimately, they saw what the market was, and they made two different choices, right? Stamkos stayed, Tavares left the Islanders and went to Toronto. So sometimes, I mean, when I hear a player making comments, is it if he's really gone, he's really probably not saying anything. He should be just saying, okay, let it play out. I just think if he's making those comments, is he trying to put pressure on Boston? Like he's not stupid either, right? He knows what we're saying is the Chara is true. If Chara leaves, now Krug. Now you've left a big hole there with both of those guys leaving at the same time. So I wouldn't be so sure in the end that he leaves. I still think there's a chance he can come back.
And let me, make a point that I think speaks to your issue too about the culture. I also think the combination of Sweeney as general manager and Cassidy as coach, that they know what they're doing.
Yeah.
I think Cassidy is a terrific coach, and I think Sweeney's done a really nice job in keeping that team competitive. So,
and again, you get Cam Neely up there. That's a former Bruin. He's part of that culture too. So I like that.
Yeah. And okay, let me give you number 4, and then you give me yours. My number 4 is, we talk all the time that we've lost, the physical play isn't what it once was in the NHL. But, what I've noticed in these playoffs is physical play still plays a role in what happens. We see that with Ryan Reeves in Vegas. He comes back in the lineup. It's noticeable. Yep. They're playing different. They're a heavier team. Yep. Dallas doesn't have the time. They're a little worried about his forecheck. So mistakes happen, that sort of thing. Matt Martin's another guy. You watch him with the Islanders, and you still see that the physical aspect of the game is still there. Not like it was when you were playing, but it is still there.
And you're right. It's not like it was back in the 70s and 80s and 90s where it was more the physical thing was, okay, like the Philadelphia Flyers, if you ever got up 2 or 3 goals or down 2 or 3 goals against the Flyers in its last 5 minutes, it was brawl. Like they're trying to send a message for the next game. All the tough guys are playing all the time. So it definitely is different. But yes, the physical play, like I said, I think Vegas is a good example of that too. You're right with Reeves. But like you could tell when they went and played Vancouver, man, they really made a point of going after the Vancouver players or skilled players. And now that's part of the byproduct. And I love the game today, so I'm not criticizing the game today, but that is part of the byproduct of getting rid of fighting, right? Because in the old days, like you played against the Edmonton Oilers in the playoffs, and you could do anything you wanted to do to Marty McSorley and Kevin McClellan. They weren't going to fight back because they didn't want to take a bad penalty. So you could do whatever you wanted. But if you ever went near Wayne Gretzky or Yuri Curry and tried to do that stuff that Vegas tried to do to the skilled players of Vancouver, that was a different story. Now they were coming after you. I remember the time when I tell the story too. I don't even think this was it wasn't even a playoff game because I was at the Rangers, and it was early in my career, and Carol Vadnais, I've talked about him so much and how great he was for my career. And he said to me one time, he said, "Tommy, you go out in the ice there and you run that Gretzky." So I ran Gretzky, knocked him down the corner. And back in the old days, a lot, especially in the Canadian rinks, when the whistle blew, there's no music played or anything like that. It was like kind of being like at the ballet or something. It's quiet. And so I'll never forget. I ran Gretz, and Glenn Sather stands up on the bench there, 1 foot on the bench and one on the boards, and yells so everybody in the building can hear. He goes, "Laidlaw, you're going home in a body bag." And I'm thinking, oh, that's great. And then he taps Dave Semenko on the shoulder. And Semenko jumps over, and I swear to God, Semenko, he was one of those guys like Clark Gillies. When he's coming towards me, I'm exaggerating when I say this, but he gives you the effect like he just got out of the woods with his hair all over and sticks out. He just looked wild and everything. And it was like a random Tuesday night game, Rangers and Oilers. So there's no big rivalry back then between the two teams. And I could tell as he's getting closer to me, he comes right over to me. The whole building's watching. And I can tell he's kind of got like a disgusted look on his face. And I'm thinking, okay, I might survive this, right? Because if he's coming over to me like frothing at the mouth or whatever, I'm in big trouble. It was almost like, Tom, do we really have to do this? And he comes up to me really close. He says, "Tom, are you going to hit Wayne anymore tonight?" And I'm trying to stand up to him. My teammates, I'm not backing down. I says, "Dave, if you don't want me to hit him, I won't hit him anymore tonight." and I could tell he was kind of like, okay. It wasn't like he was afraid of me or something like that. It's just like it was, he does it all the time. Do I have to do it on Tuesday night against the New York Rangers? And walked away. And the guys in my team would come over there, pat me on the pads. That's the way to stand up to him, Tommy. That's the way to stand up to him.
Well, you made your point. Let me give you my last one, and then you can give me your final two. And my last one is that either Miro Heiskanen or Quinn Hughes or Cal McCarr are going to be a finalist for the Norris Trophy next year. Those guys are quality young defensemen, and I think they are going to be like Heiskanen in particular. We're watching him now. Like, he is as good defensively as he is offensively.
Unbelievable. And I didn't watch Hughes or McCarr as much during the season because of their games out west. But I haven't seen like McCarr to me, and I like all of them, but McCarr to me was just like, I watched him and he looked so much like Nathan McKinnon too when they played, like not just the physical skills and the speed and the shot and all that kind of stuff, the aggressiveness to play too, like attacking the play. And you're right. Listen, I love Victor Hedman, and I know there's other good defensemen out there, but those three kids are, wow, they're good, really good.
Yeah. Okay. There are last two for you.
The one I've got one more. We're running out of time here, but I got one more, and it's kind of a pet peeve of mine more than anything. And it's not a big deal. I'm not criticizing the players. I'm not saying they're not as tough as maybe they were. But one of the big things, we've talked about this in the past, is when players block shots. I would love to see them. I know it hurts, but I would love to see them stand up and not fall down on the ice and pretend they're hurt. It's a psychological thing. And I've told the story before. My rookie year, we were playing against the Boston Bruins, and Ray Bourque was on the point. I was killing a penalty, and I think it was like a 5-on-3. So it's easier to block shots when you're closer to a player. When you get farther away, well, it's riskier too because he could come up and hit you in the head. But I was pretty confident with Bourque. He always shot pretty low all the time. So he went to shoot, and I went down to block it. It's one of those things you put your knee down and your pant comes up and exposes your leg. There's no padding there. He hit me right on that spot, and there's nothing you can do about it, and it burnt. But I knew to myself, I can't let him see that it's hurting. So I stand up. It's one of those things where you're just on fire, and the sweat's coming off you more because it hurts so much. And I knew it was going to happen. The puck had actually ricocheted off my knee over the board. So now we had to face off again. Almost exact same play. Ray Bourque gets the puck again. And I know he was looking at me. And he went to shoot it again. I went down and did the same thing, hit me in the exact same spot. And oh man, did it burn. But I could not let him see how much it burnt, because I felt to myself, okay, if I let him see that it hurts, like what I always felt like the second time he did it, he was trying to not hurt me, but trying to get me to move out of the way. Said, I'm not going to block Ray Bourque's shot anymore, but I couldn't let him see that it hurt. So I remember after he did it the second time, I know he was looking at me, and I couldn't look at him because probably the pain was in my face. But that's a kind of a thing for me when I see it happen now in these guys. You wonder, okay, now is the shooter now getting into the minds of the guy blocking the shot, right? Is he saying, okay, that guy hurt me last time, I'm not going to go block the shot again. I wish they would I know it hurts, so I wish they'd stand up and keep up. So that's my pet peeve.
Well, that's interesting. That's an interesting point. So Did Bork acknowledge ever? Did you ever talk to him about those
No,
two?
and we actually played in a charity game before the pandemic, the Bruins and the Rangers, and he was there too. And I didn't get a chance to talk to him. Everybody's all over him all the time. But it was funny, the mind game going on. I mean, it's the same with Al McInnes. Doug Wilson was the same way. You know, they had the reputation, and you know, if you're going to be a shot blocker, you have to block everybody's shot. But those two guys in particular, Doug Wilson and Al McInnes. Now, thank goodness, both of them really shot low all the time. I'm sure their teammates always said to him, "Listen, please don't shoot at my head." They weren't worried about me too much.
Both of them have had heavy shots.
Oh, awesome. Yeah. I had times, I can't remember who it was. I blocked a shot one time, went right through my shin pad, split the skin in my shin. It actually didn't even break the shin pad. It just pushed it back so hard that the skin kind of like popped and had to get stitches after the game.
Wow. Anyway, as usual, we've gone overtime, but it is playoffs, so we're allowed to do that. So we appreciate you listening. We'll be back next week to talk more hockey with you. I'm Alan. He's Laidlaw with the Laidlaw and Allen Report.
See you next Monday, guys.